good people don't smoke marijuana.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You knew we know.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Hey, boy, don't feel my world untrue. Yeah, I want to talk to you. My world can be true if you do what I tell you to. I want to talk to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Saturday, the 22nd of July, 2017. I'm your host, Larry Love. We're here every week to bring you the latest information on medical use of cannabis and adult recreational use of the plant as well. And we give you this information that goes on all around the globe. And this week, another subject that we've touched on many, many times. It's a subject that is near and dear to many people's hearts and their physical conditions, opioid addiction and abuse. And, at the doctor's recommendations here in New Mexico, they recommended that our program here have opioid abuse as a qualifying condition to get into the medical cannabis program. And the panel of doctors did recommend it to the attorney health secretary, who's not a doctor, and she, of course, turned it down, which is ridiculous because there is tons and tons of serious research on it. 25% of the people of states where people live that have legal cannabis have less opioid abuse. So we're going to talk to my friend Cam, who got off of opioids, and we'll talk to him in the second half of the show. But first up, as always, I've got news for you.
I've got news for you.
And we're just going to do a little bit of headlines here for news, because we do have a big show. In Massachusetts, a court rules for a woman who was fired for medical marijuana use. This is from Reuters, and you can check it out on Reuters.com. So this is good because, people who are allowed to go to work and use their Oxycontin and all those other opioids that we talk about for their pain, but medical cannabis, no. But in a medical cannabis state, this time in Massachusetts, they ruled for the woman, and that's a good thing for everybody. She was fired. Also, 420intel.com tells us that medicinal and recreational cannabis should be separate, say researchers. This is out of Canada. And I totally agree with that. And I've been talking about that for years. Two separate programs, two separate needs, but both very valid. And finally, another news headline is from BusinessInsider.com. If you want to be in the cannabis industry, like a lot of us do, companies are now quietly patenting marijuana, and it could lead to a messy legal future. So check out that article on BusinessInsider.com. I don't know how they can patent stuff that is against federal law, but we'll have to look at that. Okay, now let's get to some news clips. Here is a clip about a secret meeting in Colorado in the marijuana industry. This was in Colorado Springs. Check this out.
This story is developing. 11 Call for Action is investigating secretive meetings between the Colorado Springs police chief, the Colorado Springs mayor, and a delegation from the federal government, including Vice President Mike Pence's office.
The subject, how legalizing marijuana has affected Colorado. The purpose of the meeting, they won't say. 11 News reporter Jessica Light was at the city administration building while those meetings were taking place this morning. So Jess, what did you find out?
Don and Diane, not a whole lot. The police chief wouldn't even stop and talk to our 11 News crew here this morning. We want to know who called these meetings and what exactly they were trying to accomplish. Legal marijuana. Colorado voters were one of the first in the nation to approve it back in 2012. And now the Colorado Springs mayor is talking about it with the federal government. But he won't tell us what he's saying. We know representatives from the White House, the vice president's office, and others traveled here to Colorado for the meeting, which was never announced to the public. Some members of the public were invited to the meeting, like a local Dr. Kenneth Finn and School District 11 Student Discipline Services Director. We were given a statement from the mayor saying, quote, "The meetings are not open to the public because they may include sensitive investigation information," unquote. I tried to call the mayor and the police chief to get some answers. I'm still waiting for calls back. You may remember earlier this year, White House spokesperson Sean Spicer said the Justice Department will be cracking down on recreational marijuana and stepping up enforcement of federal law against it.
I think that when you see something like the opioid addiction crisis blossoming in so many states around this country, the last thing that we should be doing is encouraging people. There is still a federal law that we need to abide by in terms of the medical, when it comes to recreational marijuana and other drugs of that nature. So
I've requested all public records surrounding these meetings. Of course, we'll be sure to keep you updated once we get some answers. Reporting live in Colorado Springs, Jessica Light, KKTV 11 News.
We'll certainly be pushing for those records. All right, Jess, thanks so much.
All right, so we'll find out more about what that meeting was about. Of course, Spicy is now gone, and he's resigned, and some other people are taking over. He was so totally off on mouthing off about the opioids. Obviously, we know that. Here he is talking about the opioid problem, and he's going to cut back on cannabis, which is helping people get out. We're going to talk to Cam about that in a little while. Another state that we talked about last week is Nevada, where they're in an emergency situation where they ran out of cannabis because they gave the distribution business to the alcohol industry, and they don't know what the F they're doing. So Nevada users are now turning to the streets as dispensary prices are increasing, and then they're running out. Supply and demand, folks.
One would think smokers are just budding with joy in states where weed is legal, right?
Weed is fantastic.
It changed the whole quality of my life. I was off of all of my medicine within like 6-8 months.
But in Nevada, medical marijuana users say ever since pot became recreationalized this July, the price is not right.
We have seen a decrease in our medical patients.
Now that everyone of legal age can get their hands on the devil's lettuce, the demand is causing a strain on pot suppliers. In turn, getting legally elevated comes at a high price.
Our prices have almost doubled in some places.
With not enough ganja to go around the Silver State, even the governor issued an emergency marijuana shortage, since the state is not collecting tax money.
How much you selling that weed for, old man?
Medical marijuana patient and Nevada resident Emily Wilson says many medical card holders are turning to the streets to find doper deals.
So I thought maybe you could help me get some weed.
Oh, yes. Yes, 100% they are.
When you're on the streets and you're buying something, you don't know really what you're getting.
Dispensaries are working to keep their green patients away from the black market.
We allow them to come to the front of the line.
Wilson says it's only the second time prices have been dank enough for her.
Weed is for the people. It's the people's weed.
Sounds like this legal Nevada reefer is only for the people with enough green in their bank accounts.
Well, legalization leads to a bigger black market, and they better get their act together over there. Staying in Nevada, here's another report about testing labs, which is a good thing. We want our medicine and our recreational cannabis tested as well. testing labs are seeing a big future, a green future.
Well, the
Nevada.
marijuana business boom continues. Dispensaries have made headlines for better than anticipated sales, and the state seems to be on the way to solving the distribution issue. But one pillar of the marijuana business that hasn't stopped working behind the scenes is the laboratories. Patrick Walker is here to show us how busy these labs are right now. Patrick?
Well, Denise, you're right. They have not stopped working. Those labs play a crucial function in the marijuana industry. How safe the pot is, the potency, a host of other things must be tested according to state law before it ever makes it into a dispensary and onto the consumer. And with the production ramp up leading up to recreational sales, labs have been working at full capacity.
So it's in like a big flour form. And we have to homogenize it.
This is not your high school chemistry class.
We look for mercury, cadmium, lead, and arsenic.
This is DB Labs. It was the first cannabis lab to open in southern Nevada. And since opening just ahead of medical marijuana sales 2 years ago, business has been booming.
We test the flour, we test the extracts, and we test the edibles.
With recreational marijuana sales exploding onto the scene 2 weeks ago, cultivators ramped up production, and everything that goes out to consumers has to be tested.
And we are anticipating this to increase over the next few months, actually quite dramatically.
These drawings on the wall represent some of the nearly 100 analytes this lab tests for. There's a time crunch on that. It has to be done in 72 hours, sometimes even within 48 hours. That's just for one sample. Right now, the lab is testing 30 to 50 different samples per day. To handle that, CEO Susan Bunce has staff working on 3 different shifts.
We have increased our staff here at DB Labs, and we have also increased our instrumentations.
That expensive equipment, with names like ultra-high pressure liquid chromatography and inductly coupled mass plasma spectrometers, allows for the most accurate testing possible. That has helped the lab obtain a coveted ISO certification, an international testing standard that surpasses even state requirements.
The consumers that see that something has been tested by DB Labs, that we have gone the extra step to get that accreditation.
So there are 90 licensed marijuana cultivators statewide, nearly 60 other facilities that make marijuana-infused products. But right now, only 11 labs statewide to handle the demand of testing all of that product. All right.
So again, testing is really good, especially for heavy metals, which of course, and pesticides, which they don't have to test for here in New Mexico and some other states. Ridiculous. Test for this stuff. People are going to get sick. Okay. Now, the hypocrisy that goes on, because cannabis is all about states' rights at this point, is that you risk going to jail or getting a ticket depending upon where you live. And it's really not fair. It ruins people's lives to get busted for this plant. So here's this report. Hypocrisy at work.
How would you describe yourself?
Meet
Focus.
Micah Sweet.
Pretty goofy.
Back in May, the 20-year-old cook and manager in training was caught smoking pot in his car with a friend.
I was like, oh crap, ain't no way out of this. I was looking around to see how I'm gonna figure this out.
At the time, Micah had no criminal history.
He put us in cuffs to detain us. And we were sitting on the hood of his car while he searched our car.
Before we tell you what happened to Micah next, consider this. Over the past few years, 16 Florida cities and counties have adopted softer new rules on pot. But numbers we obtain show your chance of going to jail or paying just a civil fine really depends on which law enforcement agency catches you with it.
In Miami-Dade, police issued nearly 5,000 civil citations for marijuana possession since last year. Tampa PD, well over 1,000. But work your way around the state, and we found nearly 40% of agencies with the option haven't written a single pot citation. Port Richey Police claims it doesn't have a pot problem, while Palm Beach County Sheriff has a big problem with softening the penalties on pot. The sheriff there has ordered his deputies to keep it criminal. PBSO is following the state law, wrote an agency spokesperson.
And in Alachua County, commissioners were quick to get an ordinance on the books, but not a system to actually make it work.
They rushed this to an ordinance without infrastructure, and it's just sitting there with no usability for anybody.
So what good is it?
right now at this time it's not much good at all. It looks good on paper and it looks good to talk about, and the commissioners have kind of touted their horn on it, but it's really useless.
If they stop using time and resources on marijuana possession, they can focus those time and resources on more serious crimes.
Raymond McGuire IV of the American Civil Liberties Union supports decriminalizing marijuana in Florida and giving a second chance to first-time offenders.
Well, some law enforcement still has the outdated belief that we need to treat marijuana like a gateway drug, which it is not.
We had him review the numbers that show since mid-2015, roughly 6,500 marijuana citations were issued in Florida, while during the same time frame, more than 44,000 people were arrested in our state. Their only crime at the time, possessing less than 20 grams of marijuana.
Unfortunately, they disappoint me, but they do not surprise me.
No, I ain't got no record. I got a clean slate.
A clean slate that for Micah Sweet did not blow up in smoke the night Tampa PD busted him for smoking a joint.
Yeah, just citation.
Better than an arrest or a criminal charge?
Yeah, way better than an arrest or criminal charge. I'm thankful for that.
All of this applies to possession of marijuana as long as it's under 20 grams. Civil citations can run anywhere from $75 to $100, but again, no criminal charges. Check out who's issuing civil tickets and who's still going criminal with pot on a state map we've created on our website. I'm I-Team investigator Katie Legrone, taking action for you.
So that's just in Florida, where it's different in every county and every law enforcement agency. So you can imagine just the discrepancies that go on, throughout our country. It's got to change. It's got to end. This is a good one. This next clip is from Canada, and this is how the Labour Party, I guess the head of the Labour Party, his name is Paul Flynn, he's calling on drug campaigners to use cannabis in Parliament, light up in Parliament. I'd love to see somebody try this in our Congress or on our Senate. This is really interesting.
I had an email last night, which I greatly welcomed, telling me there's going to be a documentary, a drama documentary based on the life of Elizabeth Bryce, and I gave a little whoop of joy. She campaigned to this house under the name of Claire Hodges. Wonderful woman. She was a television producer. She actually translated the Noddy Tales into Latin, among her many achievements. But a wonderful, vibrant woman who suffered severely from multiple sclerosis. And she came to this house, and together, collaborating with her, we committed a terrible crime on the terrace of this house, because I supplied her with a cup of hot water into which she put cannabis, and she drank cannabis tea. Now, according to the rules of this house, the policy approved by the government and sadly by the opposition as well, she was liable to go to prison for 7 years for that. I mean, I probably would be accompanying her. But I think we have to say to those who put up with the barbaric stupidity and cruelty of government policy that denies seriously ill people their medicine of choice, we've got to call on those who are in this position to act in a way of civil disobedience. Elizabeth Bryce went to the Parliament in Belgium, spoke to the Parliament in Belgium, and within months they changed their policy in that country. We know most of the countries in the world allow this most ancient of medicines, been used for 5,000 years in every continent in the world. It's used for medicinal purposes. Well, I would call on people, and I know we're not supposed to do this as members, to break the law, to come here and use cannabis here and see what happens.
So I'm sorry, I think that might have been England, the UK, and not Canada. But the civil disobedience, people have been doing it for years. That's what got us this far, is civil disobedience. Keep it up, England. Okay. Couple more things, and then we're going to talk to Cam. Here's what a scientist suggests that you tell your kids about legal marijuana. I thought this was pretty interesting.
With marijuana legal in some form in 26 states and the District of Columbia, many of our kids have questions about pot. Rand Corporation behavioral scientist Elizabeth D'Amico offers her humble opinion on how to answer their queries.
Among family and friends, I'm regarded as the Dear Abby of adolescent so-called bad behavior. Here's the reason why. Because I've researched alcohol and drug use among teens for more than 20 years, and I'm a parent, people always assume I've devised a foolproof strategy for talking to kids about such issues. Lately, I've been fielding a lot of questions about marijuana legalization. I do feel like I have an edge when it comes to talking to my kids about marijuana, but sometimes it seems like I'm sharing information on the fly as I drive my kids down a busy LA street to school. Since recreational marijuana was legalized in California last fall, new billboards pop up all the time to advertise the fine art of smoking weed and where to buy it. This leads my kids, 11 and 13, to ask a lot of questions. Why do people smoke marijuana? It can't be bad if it's legal and they can advertise, right, Mom? As always, it's best to give balanced, honest answers based on facts. Why do people smoke marijuana? Some may smoke it for medical reasons to help with pain. Others may smoke it recreationally. Parents might liken it to alcohol. You know how some people have a glass of wine with dinner to relax? Now, some may smoke pot for the same reason. But it's also important that your kids know that getting high can change their mood and behavior. And just like alcohol, tell your kids it's illegal to drive after you've smoked pot. I tell my kids the main reason that marijuana is illegal for those under 21 is because their brains are still developing, and marijuana can affect their concentration and memory. It may mean you don't do as well in school. That can mean fewer opportunities like getting a good job. Given this changing legal landscape, my kids and yours are going to be exposed to marijuana as frequently as they are to alcohol. And now that it's legal, here come the marketing campaigns, which all make smoking pot seem normal. And just like alcohol and tobacco ads, marijuana ads may influence their choices. My own research has shown that middle school kids who reported seeing ads for medical marijuana were more likely to report smoking pot 1 year later. You can't just say don't do it, but you can get the facts, share them with your kids, and help them make a healthy choice.
Yes, it's all about educating people on how to use this plant properly, medicinally. You know, there's a lot still to learn about it, and a lot of people to help with it. One more thing before we get into the opioid abuse. Here's a very experienced celebrity, Seth Rogen, who talks about his intense experience with an edible. And this is a short clip from the Howard Stern show. So, you know, you can be, you know, a big recreational user, be a famous recreational user, but still, you know, eating an edible, you got to watch yourself. And everybody really needs to pay attention when you start eating edibles for the first time. Or if you have a friend, you need to help them understand that too much is not good. Here's an experienced person, Seth Rogen on the Howard Stern show.
Edibles are tough. They're like a crapshoot. I was talking to Snoop Dogg about edibles, and I was like, you fuck with edibles, man? And he said, I don't fuck with edibles because they ain't got no off button. Man, I've had, like, I gotta say, I've done a lot of drugs in my life.
Right.
The most, like, negative drug experiences I've ever had in my life are from weed edibles.
Really?
Yeah.
You mean more so than like acid or coke or
Yes, anything. More
really?
so, yeah, like no amount of no amount of MDMA I've done makes me feel as like fucked up as having like one bite too much of weed ground.
So what do you have, like a half or something?
Yeah, like that's the thing is like it's always a crapshoot. So there's some, like in LA, I just go to a store and I can't remember the name of the brand.
You got a medical marijuana card?
Yeah, and there's like these gummies that I have like found are like the most consistent. But then recently I went and saw Rogue One and I ate what I thought was an appropriate amount of weed gummy, and I thought I was gonna fucking die. Like,
really?
I turned to my wife like 20 minutes into the movie, and I was like, "Is this the most intense movie that's ever been made?"
And that was hardly intense.
And she was like, "No," and I was like, "Then I am 100% like too high." Like,
wow.
And
how much did you
I
eat?
was thinking, like, one little tiny fucking thing. I'm just like, how long is this movie? I have to drive home from this. Am I still gonna be high? Like, my father-in-law's here. What the fuck am I doing? Why is this happening? They're blowing up planets. What the fuck? Like, I had like an intense. It was intense. Like, it could be described as nothing other than incredibly intense.
And if you, who were so sort of paranoid and so good at taking these things,
it crippled me. It
if
probably
crippled
me.
me,
seasoned enough.
What would it do to me?
Anything.
Exactly.
I would be a mess.
That's what I was just like, this shit is fucking crazy.
So even experienced people can have a dose of an edible that's too heavy for them. And, you just have to keep telling yourself no one has ever died from cannabis eating too much. You should put on your favorite movie or music and chill. And the other thing you should say to yourself is that this will pass. So be careful and figure out your dosage. Okay, before we take a break and talk to Cam about the opioid abuse situation, which is all over the world, here's a segment from the Dr. Oz show on opioid and MMJ, tied into a Weedakit program that's on Viceland, the program Weedakit. So here's this report, and then we'll be back.
It's the fastest growing addiction in America, opioid drug use. Roughly 48 million Americans, 1 in 5, report they've abused a prescription drug at least once in their lifetime. In fact, 12 states have more opioid pain pill prescriptions than people. All these states. But in states with legal medical marijuana, for example over here, fewer opioids are being prescribed. Marijuana has been called a gateway drug, meaning it may lead to the use of other addictive drugs. But is marijuana the new gateway out of opioid addiction? And if it is, should we be sending people with addiction to what some are calling reefer rehab?
Opioid addiction has reached epidemic proportions in the U.S. The opioid epidemic has claimed victims across our society.
We now can say that Prince died as a result of an opioid overdose.
And reduced the life expectancy of an entire demographic group, working-class whites. Since 1998, American prescription drug abuse has risen by 400%. And today, millions of Americans who are merely seeking medical help are hooked on deadly opioids, with many turning to heroin to get their fix. But recent studies have found a surprising twist in this downward spiral. States with legal medical marijuana are seeing a reduction in opioid overdose deaths. I've come to Maine, a state firmly in the grips of the epidemic, to see if pot, which was once considered a gateway drug, could hold promise as a gateway to recovery.
2006, I had my son, got in a methadone clinic, been there 10 years.
Yeah, you still sit with the problem after 10 years.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to change that.
Yep, done.
We've been working with Bo for several months now, working with the cannabis oil to help him wean down.
Yep, done. Take my last dose.
Today, Bo's headed to Genesis Farm to try a radically experimental and potentially game-changing way to confront our country's opioid crisis with cannabis. There, he'll set a course to break his dependence on opioids, but not before overcoming the ravages of withdrawal. He's expected to suffer from diarrhea, nausea, and severe pain. To lessen those symptoms, the caregivers at Genesis Farm will dole out powerful dabs of shatter and wax and highly concentrated weed extract called Rick Simpson oil, or RSO.
How are you? Welcome to Genesis Farm.
Thanks, man.
Hey, brother.
How you doing?
You ready?
Hey, well, I'm ready.
This is ash oil.
Uh-huh.
You extract all the THC molecules off the bud itself. It's called dabs. Smoking one dab is like smoking 3/4 of a regular whole joint.
And that's what he needs right now?
Yeah. It gets him through until he gets the methadone out of his system.
Joining me is the host of Vice's Weedakit, Krishna Undavolu. So as someone who's personally experienced reefer rehab, Do you think they're just exchanging one high for another?
You know, I had the same question. I was there, we met Bo, and he was gonna go on this journey, and he was gonna detox. So when you say detox, you think not doing drugs anymore.
Cold turkey.
Right, exactly. So when he started doing weed, when he started smoking weed and smoking marijuana, it did feel like they were just trading one drug for the other. But when you sort of look into it, and you look into the stat that you mentioned, in states where medical marijuana is legal, opioid overdose deaths are actually going down. So that's a kind of like a phenomenon.
So check out Weedakit on Viceland, and you can check out that episode and a bunch of other episodes that are pretty darn good. All right, we'll be right back with Cam to talk about his experience in getting off of opioids using cannabis right after this.
It's all about the 420 MMJ Radio. The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio Show.
Hi, this is Steve D'Angelo, and you are listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
And we're back. And online, I'm really happy to have my friend, and I can call him my friend, Cam, who used to be here in New Mexico, and he has moved to another state. And he's going to tell us his story about how cannabis has helped to improve his life. Welcome virtually to New Mexico, Cam. Welcome back.
Well, thank you, Larry, and it feels like home almost. I love New Mexico. I'm sorry we had to leave.
I am too. I'm sorry you had to go, but you know, we follow a path that leads us to where we are now. So tell me about your path. I know that you had a situation where opioids were taking over your life, and it's not a very comfortable thing. So tell me your story, Cam.
Well, it started 12 years ago. I was being treated at UCLA for restless leg syndrome, which I have an extreme case of. And back in those days, the last-ditch treatment was opiates at night to calm the nerves down so you get some sleep. And so I was prescribed opiates at night, and that was okay for a while, but they started to creep into my life a little. And then in May 14th of 2007, I took it should have been fatal motorcycle accident out in the New Mexico desert, actually, near Four Corners. And I was gravely injured, and I don't use that word lightly. I almost, if there hadn't been a flight surgeon in the helicopter to chest tube me, I would have drowned in my blood on the spot.
Wow.
It got me. So that was a lucky break. It was a lucky break. Someone saw me go down on a lonely road, blah, blah, blah. So my guardian angels were working overtime for sure. But as I was gravely wounded, they started with, the morphine, all the, 24/7 all the time. I was in a chemically induced coma for a few days, and then they had me on morphine, and long story short, ICU to recovery to several surgeries later. There are various parts of, especially the right side of the body, where my 800-pound motorcycle flipped over, slammed me to the ground, then flipped over and crushed basically my right side. So I'm full of pins and needles in my neck and leg, and have lower back issues because of it. And so pain doctors, when they look at those MRIs, they have very good reason to give you pain meds. And I went from a dosage of like 3 Vicodin a day to, I was taking 40 milligrams of Percocet, and then OxyContin, and then at the end, I was on 60 milligrams of oral morphine a day.
This is on top of the Vicodin and the Percocet?
No. I mean, this is what this is
Oh, it
how it
progresses.
progressed.
Okay, it progressed from
Started
that.
off with
Gotcha.
Vicodin to Percocet to Oxy, and then to actual oral morphine, 60 milligrams a day. And the pain doctors, and I don't knock anybody. I don't have a medical degree. I know some people have breakthrough pain, and I'm not knocking any of that, but the pain doctors have a vested interest in you coming back.
And of course, as we know, pain doctors, they get lots of samples from the pharmaceutical companies, and they really are in the pocket of the pharmaceutical companies. So they automatically prescribe things that maybe people,
Yes, and just to give you a little science that I learned from, well, I ran into how I ended up being off was we moved from one city to another, and everywhere I had gone, I had just taken my MRI and my previous scripts to the local pain doctor, and they were like, okay, yeah, fine, and they would just start writing my scripts. That worked in several cities. As you know, we've moved a lot. When I got to this particular city that I'm in, I ran into a hard-ass ex-Army doc who was an expert in spotting opiate addicts. And he had my number in a heartbeat.
So what did he approach you and say, look, I know you obviously have a problem. I can see this. And did he have some help in mind?
Well, he gave me some tough love because he gave me my pain pills, but he cut my prescription by 2/3. And just to give you a little science, there's the morphine scale, which 0 is none. And if you're at 100% on the morphine scale, they could perform surgery on you and you're almost dead. And I had ramped up for a long time, several years, up to about 30 on the morphine scale. And he dropped me way back down, and my body just wasn't going to accept that. Ended up in the emergency room a couple times getting pain pills. I actually went and bought heroin once. I know that's, what the opiate crisis is doing to people. And when I went and bought heroin is when I decided to just quit.
Wow. So, all right. So, did you have experience with cannabis previous to this?
Well, very much so. Very much so. I mean, I've been a cannabis user since a teenager, recreationally, and never really thought of it as medicine. Well, until I met you, really, and we were, hanging out, and I got my formative education in cannabis as medicine from you. For sure.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm just, what I learn, I'm just passing on. And there is a lot of data out there and anecdotal and even not non-anecdotal information about how people like yourself, and I've had other people on the show before, are weaning off and getting off of these opioids by using cannabis. So how did you do it? What works for one person may not work for another, but we're here on this show to try to help other people who go through our same situations. So tell me about how you got started with cannabis, how hard, for this particular opioid and pain. Let's not forget that you're taking the opioids for pain. So how did you get started and how did it progress?
Well, it's a long story and things have changed. I'll try and make it short. When you're in the very first throes of long-term opiate withdrawal, they say 72 hours, but it's really more like 2 weeks. And I've confirmed this with other addicts of acute withdrawal. And I ended up in the hospital with acute withdrawal twice in 2 weeks because my vitals were through the roof. And they finally treated me with naloxone, which is it's not quite what's the other stuff they treat opiate addicts.
Suboxone?
Yeah, Suboxone.
So
yes.
it blocks the receptors so that you can't get high if you take an opioid, right?
Right. You can get high if you take it, but it also does calm the opiate hunger. that you feel, and any relief is welcome. You know, at that point, it also blocks cannabis receptors. So if you're taking Suboxone, if you try to smoke weed, you're wasting your weed because it blocks those receptors too. You can't get high when you're taking Suboxone. You can't. Cannabis doesn't work.
So from there, understanding that,
But I would say for the first 2 weeks, you really need the pharmaceuticals, otherwise, because you will end up in the hospital unless you go to the doctor and say, "Hey, I'm going to be going through withdrawals. If you're not going to put me in the, if you don't want to put me in the clinic, in the methadone clinic, give me the Suboxone because that first 2 weeks is really, really, really hard." Hardest thing I've ever done.
Can you tell us what the symptoms of the withdrawal were, so that if someone else is trying to get off of the opioids, that they can recognize this right away and maybe know what to do? What are the symptoms of withdrawal?
Well, extreme anxiety. Your vitals will go through the roof. Shakes, and skin feels like it's burning. Those are the physical attributes. There's also the emotional attributes because opiates are an emotional drug too. And it feels like the longer you go into withdrawal until you hit that peak, it feels like it's digging into your very guts of your soul and trying to rip them out by its roots.
And so
it's horrible.
So when since the Suboxone or another opioid blocker is being used, how do you introduce cannabis, and what form and dosage do you get started with?
Okay, well, yeah. Well, after the acute withdrawal passes, you're very grateful. But there's also a well-known process called the post-acute withdrawal syndrome, which lasts about 18 months while your lizard brain and everything in your body re-regulates to not having opiates in your system. And the symptoms are many. High anxiety is one of them. And of course, when you're off the meds, then, there is pain. The meds were prescribed for a reason, but they were overprescribed. I know my neck pain and my back pain, if I'm using cannabis, it is very helpful using it as a medicine. I mean, I'm in a red state that just decriminalized in the city, but we get medical quality, but it's still an underground economy here.
So all right. So are you
too much advice?
Are
Go
you?
ahead.
I was just going to ask. So you're at the point where you're weaning off of the opiates, right? And you said that after X amount of time.
No, I went cold turkey.
Oh, you went cold turkey.
Cold turkey.
So
that's why I'm in the hospital twice, even with the Suboxone.
Gotcha. So how? Tell me how you introduced the cannabis, and are you smoking it? Are you eating edibles? Give us an idea of how you did it.
Well, for me, Larry, I mean, edibles have always been preferred, and I like oils and stuff like that. Economically speaking, in this particular area, all of those things are available. But good flour, just in a bong, is what I can afford, and it helps.
Right. Well, you take using a bong. Obviously, you can take bigger hits and absorb more. I mean, I understand the bong thing. What about dabbing? Have you tried dabbing oil?
Well, I love dabbing, but and again, it's available here on the black market easily. It's more expensive by a significant amount.
Do you think you waste in your situation with the, trying to get off of opioids? I mean, I know that big dab hits can can be very strong and help, with pain and so forth. But to me, sometimes it can be like a waste of medicine. So I understand. When I say waste of medicine, it's just you're exhaling so much.
When you're smoking the bong, you mean?
Well, not the bong, not necessarily, because you're only smoking, bud. Okay, so but when you're dealing with a concentrate like a dab, which is really great for people's pain. Don't get me wrong on that. It just seems like you take in so much medicine. And you can only absorb so much that big exhale of all that medicine seems to be like the expensive part, to where you could be wasting some medicine. So obviously there's different devices. You don't have to take big, huge dab hits. There's pens and stuff where you can just load as you go a little piece. So
and the pen's pretty common around here, and people have turned me on to hits off the pen. And they're very nice for the pain and the anxiety, too. There's also a low-tech solution that one of my new good friends uses. He likes to, and I think you do this, LS, is he likes to put the oil on a paper.
Yeah, yeah. I've been doing that since 1970 or 69. Just rub a little oil on a rolling paper. Put in your bud, roll it up, and of course it enhances, gives you more a stronger joint, and it's a great way of smoking oil. Yeah, so that's a great way. I've been doing it for a really long time. So how long? So when you were starting to use the cannabis, are you taking the Suboxone at the same time? And
oh no, the Suboxone I only took for those 2 weeks of acute withdrawal.
Okay, all right. So once that acute withdrawal is over, the cannabis can start to take effect because those receptors aren't being blocked and so forth. So you started to obviously get relief, and so how long has it been now that you're off of the opiates?
Well, I cold turkeyed it a little over 9 months ago.
Okay, and so let's give me a normal day for you now. When you woke up this morning, how's your pain? What do you do for it? And how many times a day do you have to medicate?
It depends on the day. Some days I get up, and if I don't need to medicate, I won't until later in the day when I do. Some days I wake up and the muscle spasms and everything are really bad, and a couple hits with coffee will calm that down.
Mm-hmm.
I rarely take over-the-counter medication. I don't think it helps all that much. Again, I don't mean to knock it. I think a couple ibuprofen, sometimes with a couple hits maybe, when things are really bad. But so there's really no typical day. It's just, whatever my pain level and anxiety level is too, because I have a high anxiety person anyway. And, the post-acute withdrawal syndrome creates anxiety too.
Sure, and of course, and you have to watch your dosage with cannabis because it can help anxiety, and if you take too much of a sativa, it could actually set off a little anxiety. So to find your dosage and how a particular strain of cannabis affects you when you get a new strain or a new bag on the streets, if that's where you have to do it, it's always best to sort of test it out a little bit and see how that's going to affect you. So it sounds to me, Cam, that replacing the opioids with cannabis for your pain and anxiety is what worked. But it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, getting off the actually opioids itself was done in a pharmaceutical way, and then after you're off, then that's when the cannabis comes in. Am I correct on that?
Well, I would have to say, yeah, because in those first 2 weeks, before they got me the Suboxone, I tried using cannabis, and it was just, it was like nothing. During the first 72 hours. Then they put me on Suboxone, so why even bother? I did try, but it's a waste because it does block the receptors and it also blocks the opiates. But the Suboxone does help. I mean, any relief during that first acute stage. But I really, I don't know. Maybe if I had had access to, you know, hash oil pills or some form of very strong
edible
oral cannabis edible, it might have been different. But again, you got to remember, I did this all in a red state on a low budget. So
right. Well, you know, congratulations on that, I am happy for you. Of course, I mean, I've known you for at least 6 or 7 years, and we do stay in contact. And it was great seeing you the last time we saw each other. And so now you're sort of on maintenance. You've got your head together while you're off of the opiates. But are there times when you're in too much pain and maybe you're afraid that the cannabis is not going to work for you, that you have this itching to go back to an opiate, or are you just totally off of that and you know that you can't take it anymore?
well, as any addict must say, I don't have any guarantees on any given day. I certainly don't plan on it. I know that the pain of withdrawal, I hope the memory of that never leaves me. Because there have been a couple of days, and only a couple, that I thought, well, you know, maybe I should just go to the emergency room and get a handful of pain pills, just, you know, to take the edge off. Well, you know, right.
You know you can't do that at this point.
I can't do that.
Good.
I can't. And I have an addict personality. I mean, I had to go to NA, and I do go to NA. And I have to stay in that clean state of mind. So I just broke my anonymity, but it's mine to break. So I guess
I don't think anybody knows who you are, but that's okay. You know, these programs, anonymous programs, they work for people, and it's a support system by people in the same situation as you, so you kind of understand each other. And of course, there's also for families that have a family member. You know, there's I can't remember what it's called, but there is a group, you know, for people who have a loved one that is in a situation, an addict situation.
There's Al-Anon.
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 Right,
And Nar-Anon as well.
So before we wrap up, and just is there anything else that, just like a tip or a hint that you can give people that maybe are going through a withdrawal now, or should be going through a withdrawal?
Yeah, if you can taper off, more power to you. If you're like me, it would never happen in a million years. Cold turkey was the only way. So I would say to those cold turkeyers, go talk to the doctor. Go to the hospital if you have to. You know, take the Suboxone and do it in a supervised environment, because if you're up to 30 or more, or I don't know what the cutoff is, but if you're up there on the morphine scale, you can't do it by yourself, because your body will you'll die. You could easily die. I almost died a couple times, just because my blood pressure and respiration went through the roof, and I couldn't control it because my body was fighting so bad, wanting the opiates. And so I kind of made a mistake. I didn't go to the hospital or get the medicine until later on, after I'd already, been transported by ambulance once to the hospital. So if you're going to cold turkey it, go to the hospital or talk to the doc and get the meds. I wish I knew more about if it had stronger edibles, that could take the place of Suboxone during that acute period. That I would be interested to know that.
Well, maybe we can have someone else that's been through your same situation on in the future, and we can ask them that, because obviously, edibles are a very excellent way to medicate, and of course there are some very strong ones. You can get 100 and 200 milligram candy bars, and of course that's really heavy, and most people can't take something like that. But you have to find what your dosage is with an edible. But I could see that taking a strong edible could be something that could help people trying to get off of these terrible pharmaceuticals. Now, Cam, every week when I finish my interview, I play a piece of music, and you are an extremely talented musician, and you have something that you would like me to play today. Tell me about the song, and we'll finish up by playing that out.
Well, it's a little bit proggy, a little bit rock. It's called Monster Cookie, and I wrote it after my wife made me a monster cookie. If you take my meaning,
I do.
I sat down, I wrote this song. I had to edit it after the cookie wore off, but I did the writing while the.
All right, so this was written, not recorded while you were on the cookie, but this is.
I recorded it. I just had to go back and fix all the mistakes later when I wasn't quite so stoned.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, well, Cam, thanks very much, for coming on and telling us about your travels through getting off of opiates and moving from state to state. And I'm really happy that you are where you are now as far in life, and that you're feeling better. And sharing this experience with others who could benefit by it is what we're all about. And I know that's what you wanted to get off in this interview today. So I thank you for sharing that. And right now we're going to play Monster Cookie by Cameron. And thanks for allowing us to play it. And thanks for telling us your story.
You're very welcome, Larry. I hope it was helpful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. We'll be right back after this Monster Cookie.
medical marijuana. The medical marijuana radio. Radio show.
I want to thank Cam for telling his really tough personal story about getting off of opioids after terrible accidents and pain and suffering. Thank you, Cam. I hope it helps somebody out there and people get some help. Try cannabis. It works. I'd also like to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you have a story to tell, you're a patient, if you have a good product, you're an advocate, info@mmjradio.com. Write us at info@mmjradio.com. If you'd like to listen to some of the old shows, medicalmarijuanaradio.com. You can also go to mmjradio.com. My YouTube channel is LSLove88. SoundCloud, we're on MMJ Radio. On Spreaker and MMJ Radio as well. On CannabisTube.net, we have a channel. And Spreaker and iHeartRadio, you can listen to us on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Also on Now TV, channel 937.
Shalom.
Oh yeah, and fuck Trump.
Babu